A warm welcome from the NAACP, Roy Wilkins, Mid-Manhattan Branch. Tonight, the Civic Engagement Committee proudly presents a panel of political journalists and opinions. The discussion, the national political landscape surrounding the 2012 election year. Our gracious host is Mr. Singletary of Singletary Associates and adjunct professor at Medgar Evers College. On our distinguished panel we have Herb Boyd, journalist, activist, teacher, and author. Dominique Carter, veteran newsman, political reporter, and author. Bertha Lewis, lifelong community activist and organizer, president and founder of the Black Institute. Daa'iya Lomax Sanusi, radio host and personality, WLIB. We come to you from the Mid-Manhattan Branch.
This year's election, the election in 2012, is probably going to be one of the more unusual and interesting that we've seen in recent history. And that's really saying something, given the fact that in 2008 we had the first black candidate at the top of the Democratic ticket running. He ran against a very strong, potent, well-entrenched senator and happened to take the primary and win the election. And then a grueling fight also in the election against the Republican candidate and Sarah Palin. And despite all that, this year shapes up as something a little different, a little more even interesting. And as much has been said, there have been some significant victories by the Obama administration. There's been health care reform, though not as far as some of us would like to see it. There's still significant gains in the health care reform. He snatched the oil industry back from the state of collapse and brought it into the most success it's had in years. Kept the country's Moody's ratings safe, kept the government from shutting down, significantly killed or captured many of our Al-Qaeda leaders, including Osama bin Laden. So there have been some major victories. Still, jobs. People worry about jobs. They lose their jobs or they worry about losing their jobs. They lose their houses or they worry about losing their houses. So this election really should be about the economy, stupid. Is that right? Strangely, it's not. Strangely, it's not. And one of the things I want to talk to the panel about tonight so they can share their thoughts, having their fingers on the pulse of America and black America and brown America. I want to talk about, could any of this be race? Just saying. Just here to facilitate.
Just a socialist.
Yesterday, Juan Williams had a very interesting exchange. Juan Williams, who some people consider a liberal at Fox, other people consider a black conservative, some don't consider it at all. But he did something yesterday very unique. He challenged the Republican candidates on the disparity in poverty rates, or some of the comments they'd made with sort of veiled racial threats, racial epithets involved, and really got smacked down by Newt Gingrich in particular. And the audience cheered him, and they started to boo Juan Williams for asking questions is what journalists do. So I want to talk about things like that, and the impact of the Tea Party. It seems to be leading the Republican Party. And who are they? And are they going to be around? Are they for real? Whoever wants to start the questioning, please.
I want to begin by just setting a tone about where it is that I feel that we are here. We're here as the NAACP, and it is our legacy to take action, to turn things around, to achieve victory, and to make this a far better place to live. Okay, taking action is absolutely critical, and inspiring each of our comrades, our friends, our family, what have you, to take action in support of protecting and defending our voting rights is absolutely critical. A couple of things that I've learned from my colleagues here. One is Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And I just want to share this brief The voting protections of the 15th Amendment in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act are permanent. Section 5 remains in effect through 2031. Under Section 5, any change with respect to voting in a covered jurisdiction or any political subunit within it cannot legally be enforced unless and until the jurisdiction first obtains the requisite determination by either the United States District Court for the District of Columbia or makes a submission to the Attorney General. And I wanted to, since I get to go first, throw it to her boy to explain Section 5, why we have to defend it, what's at stake here for all of us and people of conscience, people of color throughout the country.
No, it's a very serious situation that's going on. I think that your president, Ben Jealous, did a marvelous job of approaching this issue in his MLK Day address. And he talked about, and I'm going to go back a bit, Daa'iya, to kind of frame this in a historical context. He talked about voter suppression and its origins. And we know that the whole Southern strategy, and of course this is one of the things that percolates out of this whole Juan Williams discussion with Newt Gingrich, in terms of what the Southern strategy was at that time, because you do have a shift that's going on historically in terms of the parties. Once upon a time, whether you know it or not, the Republican Party, you know, was the party that was seen as progressive. I mean, the whole founding of that party grew out of the kind of free soil movement. Many people feel that Abraham Lincoln was a founder of that party, but he was not. But he was a beneficiary of the party. And one of the things about the Republican Party, and you start talking about Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens, these are some of what you call the radical Republicans of their day. In the after the Civil War was over, you talk about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. All of this is a byproduct of this here, the radical republicanism at that time. Today, though, and you recognize the shift that went on in the 1950s in terms of the Democratic Party, not the Dixiecrats, but those who began to line up with the Civil Rights Movement. So you had this here seismic shift that's going on politically in terms of the ideological and the party's formation in this country. One of the things that grows out of these amendments is Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Of course, when you start looking at the number of legislative and Supreme Court decisions across the years, you understand that this country was founded on compromises. No matter, you go back to the U.S. Constitution, and right away we talk about a very, very blatant compromise that occurred right away in terms of the whole 3/5. You know, you talk about, and it's still there in the Constitution. In effect, what was happening right now is an attempt, is a retrograde move to go back to what they feel is those halcyon and glorious days, you know, when the Ku Klux Klan was the heroes, according to Birth of a Nation, you know, trying to get back to a time when the Jim Crow laws were in effect. In other words, we talk about the grandfather clause, now Santa Claus, grandfather clause, right? The whole poll tax and literacy tests. I mean, one of the astounding things was how they enforced these literacy tests across the South. I mean, black people would show up, educated black people would show up and just wipe them out on these tests. So they had to find another way to get around that. They started giving tests in different languages. You know, they ask them, like, voters show up and say, you know what this means? It'd be one in Spanish. And the man take it and go through it and solve that. Say, uh-oh, we got to try another one. Come back, he gave him one, you know, in Chinese. Came back, and he figured that one out too. He say, I got one in hieroglyphics. And brought it back, said, you know what this one means? And then finally the voter say, I guess it means you don't want me to vote. So it's a struggle over the years to kind of do away with these here particular kind of restrictions the abrogation of the franchise for African American people in this country. That's what we recognize on the board now. Across the whole swarm of these GOP manipulations and maneuverings that's going on. And one of the things we recognize with the situation in South Carolina that you talked about, and I know a lot about, doing research down there in Wadmalaw and Eaton and Beaufort, St. Helena and what have you, the kind of feelings of those people down there. And they certainly should be cheering the fact that the Justice Department stepped in, as they are by law able to do because of Section 5 out of the Voting Rights of 1965. It says that any county, district, or state that has a history of discriminating against voters have to go through a process, a pre-clearance process, in order to do anything about changing the voting laws of that county, that state, and that district. There's also they can get a 3-judge panel to make a decision out of Washington, D.C. And therein lies the kind of conflict that's going on in the state of Texas right now. Because we thought on January the 9th they was going to have a decision from the Supreme Court, because they got 2 different maps that are contending for the influx, a tremendous influx of people into the state of Texas over the last decade or so. So many people there now that are coming in new, that they have created 4 new congressional seats. There's a battle over who will have access and control and the power of those 4 new seats. And so we're waiting now to see exactly. New Mexico has a similar situation. So you have these states out there contending on this. And certainly with South Carolina, we hope that there's a precedent. That certainly you have, if it goes to the Supreme Court, we're in trouble. We know that. Because now it gets right back to the year 2000, when you had the whole Gore and Bush situation. And if they make a decision, it's not going to be a favorable one at all. So in a nutshell, when you talk about Section 5, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, you must know the sacrifices that we went through to get that. I was listening to Congressman Rangel at Sharpton's MLK birthday, and he began to frame that from his standpoint of making those 54 miles that he walked in Fulshime shoes, all the way from Selma to Montgomery. That march, and of course the death of Viola Liuzzo and Jimmy Lee Jackson that came out of that situation precipitated that whole move. That something had to be done in this country. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was one of the positive things that came out of that particular demonstration. So we have to struggle to hang on to that, as well as a number of other laws and rules and regulations as we go along. But that, in a nutshell, that's Section 5 of the Voting Rights of 1965.
Love this from some of the rest of our panel out there. Response.
Well, let me just say, this is not theory to me. I am sitting here, as some of you may know, as the Acorn Lady, and I was a direct recipient of hundreds of millions of dollars to attack and destroy the largest community organization of black and brown people in this country near our 40th anniversary. It was premeditated, it was sustained, it was aggressive, it was well funded, and it was no joke. When you talk about the voter suppression today, this is all part of a piece. The Republicans that are doing their debates now, that can stand up bold-faced in South Carolina, New Hampshire, Iowa, and anywhere else they want to. They have their own station. They have their own media outlet, Fox News.
Yeah.
I grew up thinking that you can have a battle. You can disagree. You can debate. But the one thing you don't do is you lie. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, and you've seen it, People lied on one of your own members, but they lied on us to set the template. We were called everything but a child of God, and it was a horror to live through that. But we came through. That's why I started a new organization called the Black Institute, because I wanted to make sure that people understood. Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, all of y'all. Yeah, this is black. This is black and the black, the black and the black. And I'm not going back. What you have here, as Herb said, is an upsettedness about power. Whether they go all the way back to the days when we in fact were enslaved, and it was an economic enslavement. That is what the intention is today. When you see the rise of something called the Tea Party, as if it was a grassroots movement, that is a lie. I've been an organizer now for almost 30 years. People don't just show up in one place at one time with the same message and already got signs just by accident. It's well funded. And this has been going on since Barry Goldwater, Richard Nixon, Mr. Reagan. You remember the Republicans were out of power in Congress for over 30 years. And they waited, and they watched, and they plotted, because they were determined. We will not wander in political wilderness for another 30 years. And so, way back in 1973, there was a man called Paul Weyrich. Now, this guy really should be given credit for the genius, for the strategy and the tactics. When folks say, well, they do a voter suppression because it's racism and this, it is true. This is a quote from this man. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of the people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down. Acorn was responsible for 25% of all voter registration in this country. One organization, 25% of all. When you remove that from the chessboard, you have a big hole. In Florida, in 2004, we registered 1 million people in that state. Not for a candidate, but to raise the minimum wage. George Bush may have won, and that's questionable. But the the minimum wage ballot passed overwhelmingly. That sent a signal. Karl Rove said, we have got to stop these people. They are poor, they are black, they are brown, they are young, they are seniors. These are the people that we usually count on not to vote. We've got to stop them. And so, if you all remember, Attorneygate, when Attorney General Alfonso Gonzalez fired 8 U.S. attorneys, the beginning of that was because they came after us. Why? Because right now, 25% of people in this country think that we stole the election for Barack Obama. And that Barack Obama could never have been elected unless there was some hanky-panky. And you know the statistics in states around the country. One voter ID law after another. One voter suppression tactic after another. I want to go back to where I began. This is no joke. They are coming for you. If you think that you, as an individual, can't be touched, you better think again. Because they're coming for you. And here's why. And they're coming for this organization. You saw, they came for Shirley Sherrod. They came for Planned Parenthood. You will get audited more. Or never got audited before. Watch out. Watch your mail. Watch what is being surveilled around you. It is no accident that these schools are being closed. This is well funded. It is no accident that all of these voter suppression laws sprang up overnight. Voter fraud. All these folks out here fraudulently voting because Barack Obama was elected. All of these laws are almost templates. They were written by a group called the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC. ALEC made the strategy to come after us and other organizations. ALEC has made the voter ID and suppression laws. They've done the anti-healthcare laws. They have done privatized public education laws. Y'all know what's happening here. ALEC does lobbying. They write the bills. They make the strategy. And here's where I think we really come full circle. This is America. America is a capitalist country. In a capitalist country, corporations are people. Who funds ALEC? The Koch brothers. Don't do coke in any way. These are billionaires who are oil and gas and energy. They are on the board. AT&T. You know, my bell. The Peabody Corporation, Johnson & Johnson, Altria, that used to be the tobacco folks, State Farm, Insurance, Kraft Foods, Pharma, Glasgow Smith & Kline, the pharmaceutical manufacturer, and last but not least, Walmart. Go ahead on in there. Get them cheap goods. Go ahead. Every dollar that you plunk down, every dollar is used to suppress you. People of color, these folks really don't like us. Never will. Even if we get more money. So voter suppression, attacks, funding of this made-up Tea Party, funded by people like the Koch brothers, the Walmarts, you know, the State Farms, corporations that can now give unlimited money, corporations that take over whole industries, and you are forced to buy their goods because they're the only ones manufacturing it. It's all of a piece. It's not just the voting. It is the attack on education. It is the attack on unions. It is the attack on health care. All of this is of a piece. And they're coming for you. Take it from me. The old saying that Gandhi had was, first they ignore you, they ignored us. Then they laugh at you, right? They laughed at us. But when they fight you, then you win. They are fighting us hard, but that fight means that we are going to win.
And because you said this, you can write into something I want to talk about this possibility of the erosion of the base that he had last time. Now, I know you're newsman. Do you know what's happening at the Apollo tomorrow?
The president's in town.
I thought you said. See, that was we PR people call that a sucker question, because there's something else happening at the Apollo.
Sorry, protest.
Okay, what this is everybody heard of the Occupy people?
Yes.
Okay. They're going to be at the Apollo tomorrow. They're going to be outside the Apollo, and they're going to say, we're calling on President Obama to stand up for the 99% and to launch a full investigation into Wall Street's role in the foreclosure crisis, et cetera, et cetera. Does this help or hurt the cause?
I do have an objective as opposed to being objective. The objective was try to get inside the Apollo. And the way they're treating the black media, which they have consistently done, is that we have been marginalized completely. I mean, when we saw when Obama came to the Red Rooster, and then later over at the Studio Museum, you know, black press, you know, we were like ostracized. Yeah. Couldn't get in this, you know. You got $50,000, cool, you come in, you know. Yeah. But the Apollo, the same situation. I put 4 calls in over the last couple of days. You ain't gonna get it. Another reporter there is Josh. And Josh has been trying for 2 weeks to get the attention of Nita Flowers, just to mention a name of a person who is like key in terms of handling the PR coming out of the Apollo and helping make those kind of decisions. So I'll probably be across the street then, you know, with the protesters. No problem with that, you know.
I understand. Why do you think that?
Well, I think one of the things, I don't think that's going to have any impact on anything. My position is this. If you say, Dominique, it comes down to race, then the blacks will go with Obama, without exception. I don't see anything.
Stay home.
No. Without exception, they're going to go with Obama, particularly when they consider the alternative. Because what happens is it's going to be 40%, 40%. It's going to be 40% Republicans, it's going to be 40% Democrat. The other 20% is critical. These are the independents. Right. And that's where Obama has to be very careful about moving his strategy to corral, because he got the independents in 2008. He's got to keep the independents. That's the most critical thing in this race. Right now, the independents, the polls shift. A poll is just a momentary snapshot. Tomorrow is a different thing. We never know how they swing. The pendulum swings to the left, it swings to the right. It swings for good, it swings for bad. It's going to have to go right down to, as in some of the football games we'll be watching over during as we move toward the Super Bowl, what team has the ball last ends up winning the game. So it depends on those last rush to get those independent voters on your side that could be the critical difference in winning this election. I mean, you talk about the whole super PACs. Obama been getting his super PACs too. You can't ignore that. You know, anytime the Kappas and Omegas come together, you know.
That's
But see, Herb, but now I'm pissed off with the president. You just got me pissed off. Because I'm annoyed with the story you just told us. Because I'm thinking back to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton held press conferences for just the black press. Because I was there. So he would meet with us individually. So how is it the guy from Arkansas playing I'm the first black president, could meet with black reporters, and the first black president, somebody on the president's staff, we don't expect him to know, but somebody on his staff, let me give you, I won't name the reporter, but this is a real life story involving the police commissioner. Ray Kelly, what they do is they give all reporters a press pass. And so a famous black reporter about 3.5 years ago, they wouldn't give her a press pass. And they do it sometimes just to mess with you. Because it comes privilege with the cross police line and so on. So the Deputy Commissioner of Community Affairs called me up. He says, Dominique, we got this problem. She's really a protester. We don't like her. But he was smart enough to ask another black person, what do we do? And I said, if you don't give her that press pass, she's going to raise hell and make Ray Kelly's life a living nightmare every day. They delivered the press pass via police car that afternoon. So at least Ray Kelly was smart enough to politics to know, don't mess with this reporter. No.
But he asked, what do you do? Here's the thing, and we family, and family got to be honest with each other. We cannot allow institutions or individuals to be undefended. Now, like you said, so-and-so is mad at Obama, but, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, and would never allow them. It's a united front. The only way we are going to get past this, people, and I'm indicting everyone, we got to stick up for each other. Now, you can be mad and upset. Do you know what it felt like? What it felt like after 40 years of organizing poor people in this country, what it felt like when people did not come and stick up for us, for Acorn, and allowed us to be treated in that manner. You got to speak up. You got to speak up and say, NAACP, other organizations, if you don't have so-and-so black journalists up in this Apollo, we will turn this mother out.
Right. They understand that.
As I say, you got to speak up. We don't know. Your private pain. You got to tell us. Because that's a simple story that means a lot to something you can do.
And they're coming to the hollow community on top of it all.
So you got to
But
support
Shirley, that's
and be
characterized
vocal.
the whole Obama administration. First of all, you recognize you're dealing with a pragmatist from an ideological, philosophical standpoint. He's a pragmatist. He does his best to be bipartisan. He's walking straight down the middle. Okay, I'll take it from both sides, but I'm going to stay in the middle. That's his position. He cannot even for a moment look like he's showing any kind of favoritism to the African American community.
But we should not expect it. Look, for years we have voted for white men who were moderates and didn't do all the things that we wanted them to do. But we went blithely along. All right. You don't make excuses for someone, but Obama never changed. Obama was never some flaming progressive and liberal. Never. So come on now. Don't try to
We know he would not be the president if he was.
However, what are they doing that we need to do? You must be visible. You must be vocal. Some fake business like the Tea Party switched America's head around. If you're not vocal and you're not visible, that's what gets people excited. Now, if you want to say we support Obama, then get out in the middle of the street and just go just as crazy as you can be. And be just as vocal as you can be. You know what I'm saying? Because folks will follow energy. Don't say Obama energized me. You got to do that. You NAACP, Lord, God bless y'all. Because you have volunteers doing voter registration. When you register folks, register them to say, we got to come out to the polls to make sure of foreclosure or this. But if you're just going to register people and say Obama, that's not going to get them. People go to the polls for their own self-interest. Right? So even if you say, listen, you register right now, because you ain't got no now, you register, because we're going to make Obama give you a job, and because you can get employment because you registered. But you got to show up. Yes. That's what moves folks. That's what moves folks. And finally, let me just say, don't believe the hype and don't be scared. When folks talk about the deficit, Social Security is bankrupting us, Medicaid, Medicare is bankrupting us, our children are horrible, our schools are horrible, and that everything needs to be privatized. Just say no. Just say no, because here's what you need to understand. Anything that you hear on television coming out of the corporate America is a lie. And if you do that, then you don't get caught up in that. But take them to the polls.
And also what we're hearing is designed to roll back everything that we have accomplished. I think we have been a little too comfortable. Yes, we've been complacent, we've been comfortable. We have maybe even imagined that equality is here, it's real, that we're enjoying it, okay? And nothing is more fundamental to our democracy than the right to vote. The history of our nation, and I'm quoting from someone else, is characterized by a gradual expansion of voting rights, but the discriminatory restrictions we face today suppress the vote and turn back the clock, and don't make any mistake about it. That is what is happening to us. Things are being rolled back. Our rights are being eroded. The rights for all peoples in this country, except for a very, very small minority of rich that control the Tea Party and the Republican Party. It's all, I mean, you know, the whole thing looks like a, the banksters are running this country into the ground. They don't care what they do with our money. And taking away the vote is a way of taking our voice away, our power away. So we have to restore, we got to protect it. We have to organize on every possible level. We must get out in the street and use our voices loudly, but we also have to be in active formation of organizations that support our children, support our history, that talk about these things internally, and come together on strategies that's going to save us. It will save everyone. It really, you know, is so important. There's a wonderful young woman, and you may have heard some of what Michelle Alexander, civil rights advocate, the author of the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. When my colleagues talk about they came for us, they're coming for you next, just think, okay? This legal scholar argued in her recent book that although Jim Crow laws have been eliminated, the racial caste system it set up remains intact. It's simply been redesigned, and now racial control functions through the criminal justice system. Okay? She says, I think we've become blind in this country to the ways in which we've managed to reinvent a caste-like system here in the United States, one that functions in a manner that is as oppressive in many respects as the one that existed in South Africa under apartheid, and that existed under Jim Crow here in these United States. Although our rules and laws are now officially colorblind, they operate to discriminate in a grossly disproportionate fashion. Through the war on drugs and the Get Tough movement, millions of poor people, overwhelmingly poor people of color, have been swept into our nation's prisons and jails, branded criminals, felons, primarily for nonviolent and drug-related crimes, and we can't fault them because it's all by design. That's my addition. The very sorts of crimes that occur with roughly equal frequency in middle-class white neighborhoods and on college campuses, but go largely ignored, branded criminals and felons, and then are ushered into a permanent second-class status, where they're stripped of the many rights supposedly won in the civil rights movement, like the right to vote, the right to serve on juries, the right to vote, the right to be free of legal discrimination in employment, and the right to vote, the right to housing, and the right to vote, and access to education and public benefits. So when you think of those statistics and what is being done to a portion of us, you can look and see what's coming down the pipe for the rest of us. Okay? So we must take action. We must organize. We must strategize. We must share information. And we must build so that we can take this country where it's supposed to be. Maybe we can achieve democracy.
I want to give our panel members a minute or two with any final thoughts they might have, but I want to add something, thinking of a great discussion we've had here. One of the other things we've seen over the last 3 years is this attack on some of the black elected officials. Right here in New York, Congressman Rangel, Maxine Waters, some of the leading black elected officials around the country. And that's something else to be thought about. And that vote cadence is very important here, because that's how that happens. I want to start with you, Herb, and any final thoughts you may have?
Well, let me say this here. One of the most alarming statistics that Michelle Alexander presented was that the number of black men in particular who are caught up in the criminal justice system outnumber the number that was on the plantations in 1850. I'm talking about the ones who were incarcerated in prisons and jails or like on parole. What I'm saying, but some way they're caught in that criminal justice system. That's like a very disturbing statistic there in terms of where we are and what's happening in terms of the future. Because many of these are young black men who are cut off from the community and forever stigmatized. Because the possibilities when they do become formally incarcerated, the possibilities of them being gainfully employed, particularly, when you have people who have all these education degrees and everything, and they can't find a job, you know how absolutely challenging it's going to be for them. I think one of the things in terms of, Donald, what we can be doing to resolve some of this is already in motion. I was so excited to be a part of the whole demonstration, the Stand for Freedom. Because it then, as the OWS, And we have to make those, we got to connect these things in some kind of way. We have to come together. I know the Obama administration, once again, has been very fearful to embrace OWS because it's kind of like pretty unpredictable. Who knows which way it's going to swing. And you don't want to get caught up making the wrong decision with them and suddenly they embarrass you in some way. That's like, trying to name the street after a living person. You wait till they're dead, you can name the street. Because hey, they can't do anything after that unless they start digging up something. Right. But I think that Stand for Freedom and is an indication, and the future marches and demonstrations that we're planning, we got to put our feet on the ground. It's got to be the streets and the suites. We've got to do that once more. I mean, if they're circling back to the 1850s and back to the plantation, we got to circle back to Dr. King. We got to circle back to the strategies and tactics that were very effective during the Civil Rights Movement and then the subsequent Black liberation struggle.
Yes.
Because that's where it is. I mean, it's almost like a conjunction of the trajectory of the lives of Dr. King and Malcolm X. It's almost like bringing the Black arts movement and the Black nationalist struggle together. It's a conjunction of people talking about, well, it's a class struggle. No, it's a race is the principal contradiction. I think at some point you have to understand to have a holistic analysis. We have to have a good understanding of how race and class and gender operates in this society.
Yes.
I think my esteemed colleague at City College calls it systems analysis. That's the esteemed Dr. Jeffrey. You said, hey, Gwen, you know it, huh? You had to take that test, didn't you? But that's what I'm saying, that in terms of bringing all these different forces together, they're out there, but they have to be brought together. We got to unify them in some kind of way. I love the energy at OWS. I've been down there several times. I do stuff for Free Speech TV. I've interviewed Jesse Jackson there. Chris Hedges, Reverend George Newman. I mean, people who have been down there, and I've interviewed Barbara Lee and Dick Gregory. All of them say that they see elements and aspects of the civil rights movement in the OWS. It's a matter of saying, okay, well, it's not the same thing. You can't step in the same river twice. We know that. It's not possible, but there are elements there that are important ingredients we need to utilize if we're going to push this thing forward and reach some kind of resolution to head off this kind of retrograde movement that's part and parcel of the people who attack Obama, and that's part of it. When a Rush Limbaugh, he puts it out there, when Mitch McConnell, who's the majority Senate leader, can say what he says and get away with it. We know that some of the strategies that are being marshaled now is gathering, around Romney, the attack on Romney and everything, but be careful, because we know that with Newt Gingrich, what he's doing there, all this stuff can absolutely backfire. And suddenly it could turn into a positive for Obama. That's my hope, that's my bet, that they'll expend all the energy and absolutely nullify each other.
So I just want to close this way because I know we're short on time. About the NAACP, and Dr. King made it possible for all of us. And that's a reason why we should always push to do our very best. That's why we can never get we all fall, but do you get back up? Do you get back up? Because I will never give them the satisfaction, not in this lifetime, of seeing me fall and not get back up. Because I owe it to the legacy of Dr. King. I owe it to all of those high school graduations that I spoke at, and all those kids that looked up to me. Each one teach one. So I close on this note. The NAACP. Again, I went to school with people that had the best education money could buy, and it would drive them insane why I was called the best. And I never understood it. President Eaton, I would even question myself. I go home and ask my wife, why the New York Times says that I'm all this, and and of course that means a big bullseye's on my back. I didn't realize, Bertha, how big it was getting until after I did the debate with Bloomberg. And after I did the debate with Bloomberg,
That's it.
And can you believe they had the nerve to tell me, my reporters friends, Dominique, you're a celebrity. We have to write about you. It's blood sport for them. Destroying my life. You know, it is blood sport. So here's my point. And I never understood why I was called the best. And I come in the tradition of brothers like this, and this is why I'm so offended. I never understood why I was called the best. Then one day it hit me. And this is what I mean about the NAACP. When God is on your side, who can be against you? And that's what I mean about the NAACP. Blacks, whites, Jews, progressive people working together for a common cause, and God is on the NAACP side. Thank you.
What can you do, and what is the tradition of Martin Luther King? Number one, you can embrace yourself. They do not fight you. They do not attack you. They do not spend lots of money to come after you if you weren't relevant. So, just understand that you are somebody. They are so scared of the NAACP right now. They work in overtime.
Yes.
And here's the problem. The other thing that they're doing, you know, we talk about unemployment.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say, you got some black consultants that's got a full employment program because they trying to figure out how to hire enough black consultants so they can tell them how to deal with y'all. So you got some brothers and sisters, some jobs.
Yeah.
But look at and try to be involved in as much support of organized labor.
Yes.
Don't let them tell you that labor and unions are the problem. They are not. Because if they were so much of the problem, why they don't want you to get with them? Okay? So, you know, 1 million signatures in Wisconsin.
Right. Yep.
Blew Scott Walker's head off. That sent a message. Martin Luther King Jr. died. What was he doing? Walking the line with union members. The Corrections Corporation of America is a member of ALEC. And they put together legislation, SB 1070, in Arizona, going after our cousins, our brown brothers and sisters, so that if you're walking while brown, we can lock you up and worry about it later because we got to feed that prison industrial complex beast. Ladies and gentlemen, just as we need to figure out how to join up with OWS, we got to get rid of this black-brown divide bullshit. I'm sorry. If we are going to be the minority country, if we are not already, it's in your own self-interest to get with, make peace with, and ally with who's going to be the largest majority. These are your cousins, your Latino brothers and sisters. That's what you need to do, and we will have power in this country. That's what we need to do, not be separated. Don't believe what you hear. Don't believe it. Just assume it's a lie. And then come back down to the general NAACP meeting and say, can you tell me this thing I heard on TV last night, is that a lie? And if you do that enough, you'll get to the truth.
Amen.
We have our final word.
Well, I am so honored to be here to remember Dr. King's legacy, our own history, our blood, sweat, and tears, those who have died, shot in the head, struggling for voting rights along the way. Shall they never, ever be forgotten. Dr. King was called into action in many places in this country to inspire and to lead. He was called by organizers. He was called by people who organized on the ground in their little communities and rural areas, and he was called on by the NAACP. We shall never, ever forget E.D. Nixon and Rosa Parks and NAACP legacy that inspires us and gives us a guiding light. And the NAACP says our voting rights are under attack by the most aggressive effort our nation has seen in over a century. So we need to sign on to the Stand for Freedom pledge, action plan, immediately. Stand for freedom because voter suppression is un-American, no matter what form it takes. Stand for freedom is because voter suppression laws disproportionately affect the 18% young people and seniors and the 25% African Americans who lack a state-issued ID, and they're getting away with this in 40 states across the country. Stand for freedom because cuts to early voting significantly impact the voting rights of working-class Americans. We are standing for freedom, and we are taking action to defend the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution and Voting Rights Act, and because an attack on young people's voting rights undermines the future of our democracy. And our democracy is literally in the hands of people of color. And everybody else is going to be the beneficiary, but let us be included in the benefits.
Before we officially thank our panel, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something. One of the other jobs I hold is as an administrative adjunct working with the president of a college in Brooklyn. And our college was named after a man who was an NAACP secretary who was shot and killed in his driveway coming home from an NAACP meeting. So I wanted to mention Medgar Evers and Medgar Evers College on this day when we honor King and so many other people, and remember that there have been far greater sacrifices than anyone's asking for you to do here.